Video released yesterday showing Nick Reiner calmly strolling near his parents' home hours before the murders. This was obtained by the New York Post. Let's take a look at it. It's video one. It's just a sidewalk. This is just him walking. For the listening audience, he has a bag over his left shoulder. He's walking calmly. Doesn't look irate, doesn't look out of his mind. Looks...
5 days have passed since the devastating tragedy inside the Brentwood home of Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle, a loss that sent shockwaves through Hollywood. As investigators dig deeper, new details are surfacing, and each one makes the situation feel even more disturbing and heavy. If you love the untold stories and drama in old Hollywood, make sure you subscribe to this channel, and we've got the inside scoop every week. A preliminary forensic report now points to a specific moment when the violence escalated, describing multiple serious injuries, including a deep wound to Rob's neck that investigators say appeared deliberate and deeply troubling. Every new finding adds another dark layer to an already painful story. Authorities now believe the chain of events may have started earlier at a Christmas party hosted by Conan O'Brien, where witnesses reportedly noticed Nick acting tense and unstable. What began as a heated confrontation is believed to have escalated later, with Nick leaving calmly, checking into a nearby hotel, and eventually using inherited family funds to retain high-profile defense attorney Alan Jackson, signaling just how serious this case has become. It's a move that's left everyone stunned, struggling to understand how someone could act with such icy calm. Investigators are now mapping out the full timeline of that night, starting with a tense family dinner that reportedly set everything in motion. According to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, the attack happened sometime between midnight and dawn, one of the darkest nights Brentwood has ever seen. Between roughly 12 and 6 a.m., investigators believe Nick quietly left his room, walked through the silent hallway, and entered the master bedroom where his parents were fast asleep. There were no signs of forced entry. Nick already had the keys and knew that house inside out. Every corner, every creak, nothing was unfamiliar to him. What came next is the most haunting part of this whole story. After the violent act, he didn't look panicked or wild. Witnesses say he appeared almost normal, calmly walking past a gas station with his hat on, as if nothing had just happened. Around 4 a.m., security footage placed Nick at the Pierside Hotel in Santa Monica, only a short 20-minute drive from Brentwood. Whether he was running from guilt or just numb inside, no one can say for sure. He checked into a small hotel room, quiet and distant, paying in cash or card. No fuss, no attention drawn. Staff barely remembered him. For hours, he didn't make a single call or seem to rest, sitting there like someone lost in a fog, disconnected from everything he'd just done. By 3:40 p.m. that same day, the tragedy finally came to light. A massage therapist arrived for an appointment with Rob and Michelle, but got no answer at the door. Worried, she called Roy, who rushed over with her boyfriend. The moment they stepped inside, everything changed. Rob was found lifeless in the master bedroom, panic erupted, and 911 was called immediately. Police arrived within minutes and found Michelle nearby, confirming the worst possible news. As investigators began piecing together the devastating scene, Nick was already on the move, captured on camera buying a drink at a gas station moments before his arrest. Around 9 p.m., surveillance cameras at an Arco gas station near Exposition Park caught Nick buying a sports drink, restless, scanning the area, yet calm enough to complete the purchase like nothing was wrong. Just 15 minutes later, around 9:15 p.m., LAPD officers with U.S. Marshals closed in and detained him nearby. He didn't fight or speak, just stood there in silence as they cuffed him, face pale and empty. The footage showed a young man completely drained, eyes hollow, almost lifeless. Forensic investigators later concluded that Rob and Michelle had likely passed 3 to 4 hours before being discovered, based on early evidence found at the scene. The timeline only made the tragedy feel heavier, leaving investigators desperate to understand what really pushed Nick past his limit. They believe he may have tried to clean up before leaving the house, maybe even showered at the hotel later, but small traces of evidence could still have clung to his clothes or skin. Surveillance cameras tracked his quiet movements through Santa Monica that morning, painting a cold, haunting picture. Experts think the weapon was something taken from inside the home, likely a kitchen knife or cleaver, something close and familiar. Because Nick knew that house by heart, he was able to move through it with eerie precision, turning a once warm family home into a place filled with heartbreak and silence. Reports revealed a disturbing number of injuries inside the bedroom, showing just how violent that night truly was. Forensic experts later confirmed that both Rob and Michelle suffered multiple serious wounds, far more than the early claims of a single strike suggested. The truth was far darker than anyone first imagined. Professor Joseph Scott Morgan, a top forensic expert from Jacksonville State University, explained that repeated stabbing usually shows clear, deliberate intent and requires enormous physical force. Acts like that happen at extremely close range, meaning the attacker has to invade personal space and commit fully to every motion, a chilling level of control and intensity. Experts called the attack sustained and intentional, every move showing focus and fury. Morgan explained the difference. Stab wounds go deep, slash wounds spread wide, and when both appear it means there was struggle, not a quick outburst. This wasn't a moment of rage, it was methodical. Forensic specialists noted that such neck injuries aren't fast or clean like movies show. They take strength, control, and terrifying closeness, turning the scene into something truly chilling. The way this tragedy unfolded shows how calculated and controlled the attack really was, leaving behind heartbreak that still shakes everyone connected to it. These new findings add even more weight to the final moments of Rob and Michelle Reiner, sending fresh shock through both their family and the public. Early reports suggest the couple may have been in bed when it began, a chilling detail that points to someone who knew their home inside out, from the layout of the rooms to their nightly habits. Experts say an attack from that close, possibly while the victim slept, is the ultimate violation of personal space. The thought that the attacker may have climbed onto the bed to strike is enough to make anyone shiver. Forensic teams described the scene as overwhelming: deep neck injuries, massive blood loss, and multiple wounds that left no chance of survival. Every clue led to one grim reality: the attacker knew the home too well. No forced entry, no struggle at the door, just silent access that pointed investigators straight to Nick Reiner, the only other person living there. Nick reportedly used part of his own inheritance to cover his legal defense, a move that shocked the public and sparked outrage across the country. People immediately questioned how he could afford it, knowing he didn't have a steady career and only worked on a few small film projects with his father years ago. The money trail raised eyebrows fast. His attorney Alan Jackson isn't just any lawyer, he's one of the nation's top defense attorneys, known for handling only high-profile, complicated cases, and his name alone comes with a massive price tag. Reports say that even when Alan Jackson cuts his rates, his cases can still cost up to $10 million, a number that leaves people stunned. It highlights the painful contradiction at the center of this story: a son accused of harming the very parents whose wealth now funds his defense. For Nick, those costs are expected to climb even higher with the heavy charges and non-stop media spotlight. Even at a discount, the bill could reach sums most people couldn't dream of paying. When asked outside the courthouse, Jackson stayed quiet, saying only he couldn't reveal who was covering the fees. That silence set off a wave of rumors. Some said Jackson might be taking the case for free because of the media spotlight, while others whispered about secret deals behind closed doors. But then came the real shock. On December 18, 2025, insiders close to the Reiner family revealed the truth. The legal fees are reportedly being paid from Rob and Michelle Reiner's own estate, worth around $200 million. Sources claim surviving relatives, Jake and Roy Reiner, agreed to fund Nick's defense, hoping to argue mental instability and reduced responsibility in court. Sources say the family believes placing Nick in a secure psychiatric facility instead of serving life in prison would be a more humane choice, something Rob and Michelle might have wanted for their son. Under California law, anyone convicted of taking a life can't inherit from the victim's estate. But that rule doesn't stop relatives or executors from using estate funds for legal defense before a verdict. Legal analyst Sean Weisbart confirmed it's technically allowed, though extremely controversial. Others warn the executor could still block those payments to avoid legal backlash later. So far, neither the family nor the court has confirmed where the defense money is coming from, leaving the public full of questions about loyalty, justice, and morality. Then came the next chapter: Nick Reiner's first court appearance. He faced 2 counts of first-degree homicide with aggravating circumstances for multiple victims. Nick entered the Los Angeles County courtroom in a blue inmate suit, a symbol of both safety and downfall. Representing him as expected was powerhouse attorney Alan Jackson, known for defending some of the nation's biggest names. The hearing unfolded under tight security and heavy tension. No live cameras were allowed, adding even more mystery to a case already gripping the nation. Attorney Alan Jackson asked to delay the arraignment so Nick could decide on his plea, and the judge agreed, pushing the next hearing to January 7th. For now, Nick stays in Los Angeles County Jail, waiting for what comes next in this shocking case. The only time the public heard his voice was when he softly answered the judge, confirming he understood his rights, a chilling reminder of how far his once privileged life had fallen. "Mr. Reiner, do you waive your right to a speedy trial?" the judge asked. The judge asked the question and Nick's response was flat and emotionless. "Yes, Your Honor, I do." That was it. No explanation, no emotion, just silence that chilled the room. The hearing ended almost as fast as it began, leaving everyone frozen in disbelief. Now all eyes are on January 7th, the date that could change everything. The upcoming hearing has the media, the public, and the Reiner family clinging to every update, desperate for clarity. That cold, mechanical courtroom moment reminded everyone, this story is far from over, and justice is only just beginning. Before the trial even begins, investigators are re-examining one of the darkest parts of this story: Nick Reiner's long battle with addiction. Behind all the fame and privilege hid years of pain that may have shaped the tragedy we see now. Born in 1993, Nick's struggles began early, around age 15, when he reportedly started using hard drugs like heroin and cocaine. It sent his life spiraling fast. As the son of acclaimed director Rob Reiner and grandson of Hollywood legend Carl Reiner, Nick grew up under a spotlight that felt more like a cage than a dream. His family saw the warning signs early. Rob and Michelle, desperate to save their son, sent Nick to his first rehab while he was still a teenager, the start of a painful cycle of treatment and relapse that would repeat nearly 20 times. Each time he'd show progress, then fall back again, trapped in the same pattern. It became a heartbreaking loop of hope and disappointment. Still, Rob and Michelle never stopped trying. They gave him love, new chances, and even welcomed him back into their Brentwood home to help him start over. Rob spent endless hours helping Nick with creative projects, hoping structure could pull him out of addiction, but recovery was fragile and the battle never stopped. The same home built to protect him would later become the center of heartbreaking tragedy. Rob once said that being a parent means never giving up, no matter how far your child falls. But in this case, that love ended in devastation. The son they fought to save became the one accused of taking their lives. When Rob and Michelle finally tried tough love, Nick walked away, determined to live on his own terms. Nick drifted across states, Maine, New Jersey, Texas, living a rough, unstable life he later called his darkest years. He nearly lost his life more than once, surviving only through sheer luck and stubborn will. Homeless and trapped in addiction, he leaned on dangerous street ties while his family watched from a painful distance. Then came a brief spark of hope. In 2015, at just 22, Nick stayed sober long enough to work with his father on Being Charlie, a film based on his own struggle. For a moment it seemed redemption was real, as father and son began to rebuild what addiction had torn apart. By 2018, everything collapsed again. Nick relapsed harder than ever, back on heroin, and nearly died from a cocaine-related medical emergency mid-flight. Soon after, he destroyed his parents' guest house in a haze of rage, smashing TVs, lights, and furniture until nothing was left standing. That became the breaking point. Rob and Michelle sent him back to rehab, clinging to one last hope. By 2020, they let him move back into the main Brentwood home, trying once more to keep him close and safe. But friends say his behavior grew more unstable, and the couple was deeply worried about his mental state in the months before the tragedy. Nick's story is a painful reminder that even deep love and endless support can't always stop someone from destroying themselves. Now many are asking, will addiction become part of his defense? Alan Jackson, Nick's high-profile attorney, is known for crafting legal strategies built around mental state and intent. Insiders think he may argue that years of drug abuse damaged Nick's ability to control his actions that night. Witnesses at the Santa Monica Hotel described him as extremely high after the incident, a claim investigators later confirmed, but legally, that alone won't prove insanity. In most cases, being under the influence doesn't erase responsibility, it only slightly affects how intent is judged in a first-degree charge. The defense may argue Nick's mind was clouded by confusion, not calculation, hoping to lessen the charge's weight. But prosecutors disagree. They say if someone grabs a weapon and strikes after an argument, that shows planning and awareness. So while drug use might explain his emotional state, it won't erase what happened. The trial will test how far that defense can stretch and where the line between addiction and accountability truly lies. Nick's defense team faces a brutal uphill battle. Rob and Michelle's lives were taken with a knife, but investigators still can't confirm whether Nick brought it or grabbed one from the house that night. What they do know is that earlier arguments hint at some level of planning, and prosecutors won't ignore that. Even if drug use is mentioned, it carries little weight under California law. If convicted of first-degree homicide with special circumstances, Nick could spend life behind bars with no parole. Without proof of mitigating factors, the sentence could still reach 25 years to life, and investigators have found zero signs of self-defense or accident. Experts say this looks like a crime fueled by raw emotion, anger and passion colliding in the worst way. The case's weight grows even heavier knowing the victims were beloved Hollywood figures. The witness list reportedly includes names like Conan O'Brien, Larry David, and Billy Crystal, turning this trial into a courtroom event the world won't forget. Analysts predict it could rival the O.J. Simpson and Menendez brothers cases in national attention. The trial is expected to start in late 2026 or early 2027, with little chance of a plea deal. Prosecutor Nathan Hochman plans to lean hard on physical evidence and a detailed narrative to prove intent beyond doubt. Every part of Nick's life, his addiction, mindset, and every move that night will be torn apart in court. Fresh forensic reports place him squarely at the scene, backed by DNA, blood traces, and surveillance footage. That makes any claim of self-defense almost impossible. Rob and Michelle were both elderly, while Nick was just 32, a clear imbalance that weakens his case even more. In rare cases, lawyers argue for manslaughter when intent isn't proven. But here, with the argument, the retrieved weapon, and the brutality involved, that defense looks paper-thin. Reports suggest Rob and Michelle suffered severe neck injuries, a sign of deliberate close-range intent. If verified, that detail could hugely strengthen the prosecution's case. Alan Jackson, leading the defense, now faces massive pressure to shape any story that could lessen Nick's guilt. Every detail, body positions, home security footage, and forensic mapping could decide his fate. Then comes the question of perception. How will the jury see Nick Reiner, a man born into privilege but consumed by addiction? In Los Angeles County, jurors come from every background. Will they see a broken man battling mental illness, or someone who threw away every chance he ever had? That question still hangs heavy as the trial nears, one that could define not just Nick's fate, but how far love, accountability, and redemption can stretch under Hollywood's bright lights. Conan O'Brien's annual Christmas party had always been a rare escape, a night for stars to laugh and relax away from the spotlight. Rob and Michelle Reiner were regulars, but that year felt different. They brought their younger son Nick, a choice that in hindsight carried devastating weight. Friends later revealed the couple had been deeply worried about him in the weeks leading up to the event. In the months before that night, Nick's behavior had grown more erratic, disappearing for hours, snapping without warning, and making late-night calls that left his parents terrified to leave him alone. So they brought him to the party, hoping a familiar crowd might calm his mind, maybe even spark a little joy. Nick wasn't on the guest list, but Rob texted Conan to explain, and Conan, ever gracious, said yes instantly. When the Reiners arrived, everything seemed picture perfect. Rob laughing with old friends, Conan greeting them warmly, and Michelle shining in a dark, elegant dress that turned every head in the room. But Nick's energy instantly felt off. While everyone else laughed and mingled, he stayed in the background, hood up, shoulders hunched, eyes darting like he was searching for something invisible. The gray hoodie and blank stare made him stand out in a room full of smiles. Witnesses later said Nick began walking up to random guests, asking strange, blunt questions. "What's your full name? Are you famous?" His voice was flat, his gaze piercing, unsettling. Most people tried to stay polite, then quietly stepped away, sensing something wasn't right. Guests began whispering that something about Nick felt wrong. Actress Jane Fonda later said she felt a chill when he stood too close, staring without blinking like time froze. The tension exploded when Nick interrupted a private chat between Bill Hader and another guest, repeating the same robotic questions over and over. When Hader calmly asked him to step back, Nick just stood there silent, frozen, eyes locked before suddenly turning and storming off. The room fell quiet. Conversations stopped, glances turned to the exit, and the once warm, buzzing party turned cold in an instant. What started as a night of laughter now felt heavy, and unspoken tension hung in the air. The energy in Conan's house never fully recovered. Guests tried to act normal, but the whispers about Nick spread like static, impossible to ignore. Michelle kept her grace, smiling through the worry while sneaking nervous glances down the hallway. Rob, ever the protective father, quietly followed Nick from a distance, careful not to make a scene. Nick drifted from room to room, the patio, the bar, the living area, mumbling to himself and nursing the same untouched drink. Witnesses later said Nick looked detached, confused, almost haunted. Near the kitchen, Rob gently placed a hand on his shoulder and asked, "Hey buddy, you okay?" Nick didn't answer. He just stared ahead, tense, then quietly walked off again. By 10 p.m. the party was loud and alive, but for the Reiners, the pressure was building. Michelle whispered to a friend that she wanted to leave soon. Nick wasn't doing well. Guests like Larry David and Bill Hader saw Rob and Michelle in the corner, whispering nervously. Then a quiet argument broke out, not enough to stop the music, but enough to turn heads and stir unease. An insider later said Nick snapped, accusing his parents of talking about him behind his back. His tone sharp, angry, and loud enough to turn heads. Rob tried to calm him, saying, "Let's just go home," but Nick shoved past, knocking over a table of drinks. Security quickly moved in and Conan himself stepped forward, saying gently, "It's okay, let's get some air." The group headed for the exit, Michelle clutching Rob's arm, her face pale with fear and embarrassment. Outside, the cold December air hit hard, quiet, heavy, nothing like the warmth they'd just left. Rob tried reasoning with Nick as they made their way to the car. Michelle stood a few feet back, visibly shaken, as Nick paced near the driveway, hands trembling, voice raised in scattered anger. Witnesses said he shouted something unclear before jumping into the car and slamming the door shut. The Reiners left quietly after that, ending their night early. To most it seemed like just another awkward family moment, something that would fade by morning. But for Rob and Michelle, that drive home marked their final hours. Later, neighbors in Brentwood recalled hearing faint arguing around midnight, nothing alarming at the time. By morning, that same home would be sealed off by police tape, at the center of a tragedy that stunned all of Hollywood. The drive home was silent but tense. Nick, still agitated, reportedly accused his parents of embarrassing him in front of their friends. Rob tried to calm him, telling him to rest and let it go. But once inside the house, the tension flared again. Forensic experts believe that sometime between midnight and dawn, Nick entered the master bedroom while his parents slept. Whether it was anger, confusion, or a complete breakdown, no one can say for sure. What followed, investigators later said, was an act of violence so severe that official reports could only describe it in fragments. What makes this tragedy even harder to grasp is how normal the night began. Friends said Rob and Michelle were hopeful. They truly believed Nick was improving through therapy and new medication. Rob had even been planning a creative project for them to work on together, something to give his son purpose again. No one could have imagined what was coming. By the next afternoon when their bodies were found, Hollywood froze. News hit social media within minutes, first as whispers, then confirmed. Tributes from stars and fans around the world poured in, mourning 2 lives lost too soon. Many struggled to understand how such a loved Hollywood family could fall apart overnight. In the days after, all eyes turned to Nick, his mental health, his addiction, and the warning signs everyone might have missed. Old interviews resurfaced, showing his battle with identity and pressure. In one clip, Nick once said, "I feel like I was born into a spotlight I never wanted." That quote now echoes with painful irony. Investigators gathered more evidence, surveillance, forensic samples, and witness accounts from Conan's party, slowly piecing together Nick's erratic path that night. The fight, the sudden exit, the hotel hours later, every detail aligned with chilling precision. Yet even as the evidence stacked up, haunting questions remained. Why, and how could someone surrounded by love and privilege reach such a breaking point? Psychologists called it a perfect storm, untreated trauma, addiction, and emotional collapse colliding all at once. Meanwhile, Hollywood faced its own guilt. Insiders quietly admitted they'd seen Nick's instability for years, on sets, at parties, in private circles, but brushed it off as another case of Hollywood eccentricity. As the trial neared, the grief in Hollywood became impossible to ignore. Producers who had worked with Rob released emotional statements, and actors who shared the screen with him called the loss beyond comprehension. Friends of Michelle, remembered for her warmth and grace, were shattered. "She always believed he'd get better," one longtime friend said softly. "That's what makes it unbearable." Even Conan O'Brien, usually private, shared a rare public message expressing heartbreak and disbelief, saying his thoughts were with the Reiner family and everyone touched by the tragedy. Nearly a year later, the case still dominates headlines. Each new court filing or piece of evidence reignites debate about mental health, privilege, and justice. It feels like a movie, except it's painfully real for those who lived it. For the Reiners' friends and fans, that glittering December night will never shine the same again. What was meant to be a joyful celebration became one of Hollywood's darkest chapters, proof that even amid fame and fortune, darkness can still slip in. That night, sensing the tension rising, Rob quietly pulled Nick aside near the hallway, his tone calm but heavy with emotion. The argument erupted fast, sharp words cutting through the noise as nearby guests fell silent. Rob's voice carried down the hall, firm and frustrated, trying to make his son see how his erratic behavior was unsettling everyone. "You need to pull yourself together," he said, his tone echoing with both anger and worry. Michelle hovered close, torn between them, pleading softly, trying to calm Rob while urging Nick to breathe. But Nick wouldn't hear it. His replies turned harsh, his tone rising, and that flash of anger in his eyes said everything words couldn't. Within minutes, the argument became a scene, the joy drained from the room, replaced by uneasy silence. Rob and Michelle finally decided to leave, offering quick goodbyes with forced smiles and pale faces. As they headed toward the exit, Michelle turned back one last time, eyes fixed on her son, the boy she had loved, protected, and forgiven so many times. One guest later recalled that look, silent but full of heartbreak, as if she was saying, "We love you, but we have to go." Nick stayed behind, motionless, his expression blank, the air around him charged with something no one could explain. Some guests whispered nervously, unsure what to make of Nick's strange stillness, while others quietly kept their distance. No one knew that within hours, that tension would turn into something irreversible. That night, the Reiners drove home in silence, their final ride together. The house that once echoed with laughter, forgiveness, and love would soon fall into darkness. What followed, the silence, the discovery, the arrest, would shatter Hollywood. A home once seen as a symbol of creativity and unity became a chilling reminder of how fast love can turn to loss, and how deep pain can drag someone down. The tragedy of Rob and Michelle Reiner remains one of Hollywood's most heartbreaking stories, not just for its brutality, but because it shattered a family that spent years fighting to stay whole. Every new courtroom update reopens wounds that still haven't healed, and beyond the headlines, painful questions linger. In those final moments, did Rob and Michelle realize their love could no longer save their son? Could they have imagined that decades of sacrifice and hope would end like this? Those questions still haunt their family and everyone who's followed this devastating story. We may never fully understand what led to that night, but we can honor Rob and Michelle by remembering the love, warmth, and humanity that came before the tragedy. Thank you for following this emotional journey with us. If you love the untold stories and drama in old Hollywood, make sure you subscribe to this channel, and we've got the inside scoop every week. What do you think about the heartbreaking story of the Reiner family? Do you believe the warning signs could have changed what happened?